Hey everyone, I'm Robbie Strazynski. Welcome to episode number 15 of The Orbit, which we are recording on January 25th, 2022. This is our first episode of The Orbit for the year, and with the Global Poker Awards just a few short weeks away, we've gathered together a first-rate panel of poker's finest to discuss some of the nominees, the ceremony itself, and more. Without any further ado, I'd like to introduce this episode's panelists. In seat one, we've got Matt Berkey. Matt is the founder and lead instructor of the Solve for Why Poker Training Academy. He's amassed over $4.3 million in live poker tournament earnings since turning pro in 2003. He was also the subject of the 2017 American Poker Award-winning documentary, Dead Money, a super high roller bowl story. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Cool. In seat two, we have Sarah Herring. For over a decade, Sarah has been the head of video and podcasting, as well as lead presenter for Poker News. Sarah won the 2018 Global Poker Award for Poker Journalist of the Year. Sarah, welcome to The Orbit.
Thanks for having me.
And in seat three, we have Matt Savage. Matt is the executive tour director of the World Poker Tour, a co-founder of the Tournament Directors Association, multi-time Poker Hall of Fame nominee, and tournament director for Commerce Casino, Bay 101, Thunder Valley, and many other worldwide venues. Matt has won the Global Poker Award for Tournament Director of the Year, as well as 3 American Poker Awards, plus he's nominated once again this year. Matt, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here, Robbie.
So, hey, everybody, thank you all very much for taking the time to join me today. I'm looking forward to today's roundtable discussion. Let's jump right in with Berkey in seat one. The shortlisted nominees have just been announced for the 2021 Global Poker Awards. So what we want to do here with our first topic is take a look at 3 of the major categories, and maybe we could all kind of handicap who's favored to win and why, and if perhaps there are some snubs. So we're going to start with the best final table performance. It's always one of the harder ones to judge because at the end of the day, all of these folks win. So we've got, of course, Karai Aldemir, who won the World Series of Poker main event, Jeremy Osmus, who emerged victorious at the WSOP PLO High Roller. He beat Helmuth and Negreanu, who finished in second and third place, respectively. You have Dan Jungleman Cates, who won the Chip Reese Trophy at the WSOP PPC, the 50K Players Championship, defeating legends, Ryan Lang, Chris Brewer, Paul Volpe, and Elliot Lesmer were at that final table. And then you have Adam Friedman, who won the WSOP 10K Dealer's Choice 6 Max. What was just so remarkable about that, the third time in a row, back-to-back that he wins the same event. And again, he denied Helmuth the victory. He finished runner-up. So, Berkey, why don't you tell us if you think that, this is the right 4 nominees? Who do you think is favored to win? And perhaps if there's someone, left out there.
I think that this is the tough part about award shows. It's obviously very subjective in nature. And really what we're trying to find are narratives that are interesting to the crowd and keep people picking favorites and coming back for more. I think largely this is a pretty good crew. I'm kind of surprised to not see anything with Adamo, just given the run that he had in the high rollers. But again, I hate to be reductive, but it's kind of a silly category, right? It's like you're judging an entire scope of work based on a 9-handed sit and go kind of thing and trying to figure out who had the best performance. To me, it's like Friedman's is kind of unrivaled. He wins the exact same event 3 years in a row. It's just really difficult not to kind of stand up and applaud that. But you're always going to be up against the main event winner because it's just such a ridiculous event. And the fact that a well-known professional won it this year is even more remarkable. Just with everything on the line and it being such a big event. And I don't know that he's known to be that big of a mixed game tournament player to begin with. Throw in the Lang kerfuffle three-handed. It was just, pretty legendary final table, easy to vote for. But I think my vote would just be for Friedman.
Okay, we are still at the time of recording. We're not allowed to reveal exactly who we did vote for. So he uses the word, my vote, just casually in the course of conversation. Sarah, your thoughts on this field of nominees?
Yeah, I mean, actually, when looking at all the categories and things, I kind of was, I guess, thinking this was going to be pretty obvious, and maybe I'm wrong. Of course, like the main event is always a thing, but to me, Friedman stands out for being the only person ever to have done this back to back to back, but also that he did it. I mean, anytime you're doing this in like a 10K event, right, in a championship event, you're up against the best players, which of course also in the 50K Poker Player's Choice, it's the same thing, but like the Dealer's Choice, I think, is definitely a player favorite because it showcases so many games, because there's so many different places where people are, trying to find edges or games that are like a little less figured out maybe. And that Adam has done it 3 times in a row. And even when he won against Sean Deeb, I think that was like a big storyline. Him winning the last time was definitely a big storyline. So then to come up against now Phil Hellmuth, who was sort of like the story of this year's World Series of Poker, I think it got a lot of extra showcasing where maybe Adam Friedman himself doesn't traditionally garner a lot of attention. And yeah, even if I was just scrolling back through the blog to kind of look at how things happened for him, and it appears that he also made some incredibly sick hero calls. He made some really good just calls all throughout the final table, and it just to me looked like he just nailed the final table.
Wow. Definitely, a lot of great performances. Again, at the end, these are all winners. And in a sense, it's kind of like you compare someone who won the 100 meters or the 200 meters and the 400 meters, who won better, who exhibited, more talent and not just, luck box their way to the winner's circle. Matt Savage, what do you think about this field of nominees?
Well, if you're going to use that as a thing, I think that you need to talk about Adam Friedman, as Berkey said, winning 3 times in a row. That's just it's impossible to imagine that somebody could win that event 3 years in a row. So for me, Adam Friedman definitely had a big thing. If I don't even know that we're talking about Kate's performance as much, if it wasn't for Ryan Lang's fold, which happens to be the worst fold in the history of the event, maybe the worst fold ever. So maybe that wouldn't even be there. But of course, the WSOP main event is always up there as probably the top nomination, just for getting through a field of that size, having it be a known pro winning it. It's a big deal. So, being all WSOP nominations, I'm against that in general, but just being with the World Poker Tour, I think we had some record-breaking events, but with recency bias and all, and as great as the WSOP went off this year, I completely understand why that's there. But definitely, in my opinion, probably Adam Friedman gets the nod here.
Yeah, so some fair points from all of you about events or individuals, and we mentioned again Michael Adamo, who did not appear on that list, and it kind of in a sense makes you think sometimes when you do cast that vote, you have to say, okay, we're comparing 4 winners. What if it was a different person who won? What if, for example, just George Holmes comes to mind? Does he get nominated? Among these 4. So it's a kind of the questions that we're asking. Love the opinions. You guys clearly came into this show well prepared and researched. Thank you very much for that. We'll move on to the next category at the Global Poker Awards that we'll be examining today on the Orbit. That is Best Broadcaster. Always contentious, but always for the right reasons. The fact of the matter is we all love our broadcasters. They make the show come alive for all of us viewers at home. We've got Jamie Kerstetter, Ali Najad, Jeff Platt, and Joe Stapleton. Again, folks who have been involved in this industry for years, excellent at their craft. It's almost like you can't really go wrong when you pick a winner in this category. Is there a favorite? Is there someone else who may also have, ought to have deserved from their 2021 performance to be on this list? Sarah, what do you think?
Okay, I think it's always hard, and also, of course, this is like a category very near and dear to my heart, is looking just at that year's performance, I think in a job like this, it's very hard to look at someone and only see that year's performance, especially in the difficult year that we had in terms of what was accessible to us as broadcasters or, just live events in general. And, so of course, if we're going to have to throw out their snubs, like I'm sure Matt could maybe agree with me in some ways, I would have liked to have seen my girl Lynn Gilmartin on this list. I think should be somebody who needs to be recognized in our industry as one of the absolute bests and just like a wonderful. She just like represents poker in a great way, and I think she's also just incredibly talented at her job. That being said, all of these broadcasters who were nominated are fantastic. Joe, I think, has already won an award before, so I just almost always am kind of like, well, let's like recognize someone else who maybe hasn't. There's plenty of talented people. I want to say maybe Ollie and Jamie had. I'm not sure, but my vote in this category has to go to Jeff Platt. Of course, I'm biased because I've worked with him. Of course, I think, biased because I knew him a little bit before he was like more of a face in this industry. But I also think he's brought something really fresh to poker. We hadn't seen, I think, as many fresh faces in the game in a while until a few years ago. He was just somebody new, and I think he's worthy of recognizing at this point in our industry as having brought some of his sports skills into the game.
Yeah, undeniably, when you look at, like you said, specifically at 2021, that freshness factor was especially nice as the game kind of just came back from the doldrums. We kind of had like this, long forced break from live poker. So it was nice that those who brought in the extra energy, certainly worthwhile performance. Matt Savage, your thoughts on this? I saw you smirking just a little bit when Lynn Gilmartin's name was mentioned.
Yeah, for me, it's hard to imagine since the four nominees are there. It's hard to imagine that Jeff Platt doesn't win this thing. Of course, Sarah doesn't mention, but he's also was doing the Poker News podcast as well. So not only was he doing all the stuff in the booth and on the floor, he had an amazing year. And I really do think that he's going to be the guy that's going to take over for Norm and Lon when they decide to step away from what they're doing at the World Series of Poker. So that's been a 20-year, run for them as well, or 16-year run for them as well. But I do need to start making the case for my man Vince Van Patten, who's been around for 20 years now as a broadcaster. Doesn't even get a nomination, but he's had more final tables than anybody on this list, and didn't even get a nomination. So I feel kind of bad about that. I know that Norm and Lon did get the Lifetime Achievement Award about 4 years ago, but I think Vince gets overshadowed here, by Mike Sexton and Tony Dunst. And I think that he's done a lot for the game. He's a poker personality. He's down here in Florida with me this week and has done, just everybody wants to go up and talk to Vince. So I do think he got snubbed a little bit here. But of course, Lynn Gilmartin as well has done a lot of good for poker. But I think Jeff Platt takes this one away in a rout.
It's fun. It's interesting that you mentioned Vince. Like you said, he's been around for 20 years. He's almost part of the furniture, part of the scenery. We take it for granted. Of course, Vince is going to be there. And when we see these names, Ali Najad, Jeff Platt, Jamie Kerstead, Joe Stapleton, same thing. They've been around. They're expected, and it's almost like if they weren't there, all of a sudden you realize what you're missing. So definitely a good case to be brought for Mr. Van Patten as well. Berkey, yes, go ahead.
Maybe he would bring his Real Housewife wife to the American Poker Awards,
Exactly.
or the Global Poker Awards, and then we could also get some more, potential poker people out there that maybe wouldn't know that much about poker. Maybe she could make a nice post about it. And I did want to say about Jeff also that what he did during the World Series of Poker main event, for those who, know about how difficult it is to get interviews from people anyways when they're in these very high stress situations, to be asking people to do interviews while they're at the table, first of all, just don't think that's a great idea. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I think as someone who was having to ask for these interviews and still conduct them and did it very gracefully, I would say that was a big ask in my opinion, and he handled it well.
And he did it in such a way as well. He almost like the stand up for me, please became its thing. and like people, kind of wanted to stand up for him. And the way to handle it, we all learned Pat Lyons. You just keep on playing and go all in blind. That's the best way to handle the Jeff Platt tableside interview. Matt Berkey, you are a player. Perhaps you have a little bit of a different perspective, but also, of course, with the Solve for Why training, you do a lot of video production as well. You certainly understand the value, the importance of good broadcasting. Who's your pick here? And also, if you have any additional thoughts on this slate of nominees.
I kind of want to start with the slate in the category to begin with. I think that like the awards are headed in a good direction, but I feel like we need to branch off of such generalized categories. If we even just like take a look at these 4 nominees, we see basically 3 color commentators and then Jamie, who's kind of forced into an analyst role. And it's really difficult to kind of compare them. And I think that's why you see like Lynn get snubbed and why Jeff, if he was only stuck in the please stand up role, probably would have gotten snubbed. But he's doing a lot of commentary for PokerGo tournaments, and he does a great job of carrying the action. Kind of to Sarah's point, he's very polished when it comes to his sports background and like knowing how to lead that role. It's tough, right? Because I think all of these guys are very niche at what they do. Girls as well. I don't mean to slight Jamie. But like I want to pick Jamie because I feel like she's cast into the most difficult role. She's stuck in the analyst role, but at the same token, she wants to be a personality. She wants to lean on her humor. And that's kind of Norm's shtick, So she's a part of this like 3-headed team where it's not exactly clear what her specific role is, where the other 2 are very cemented. And that's like really daunting. And, if we go all the way back to when she first got this gig, 2 or 3 World Series ago, there was a lot of pushback, especially given with how excellent Shulman is and how used to seeing him on the grand stage we are. That's really unfair for somebody who's just breaking in to be compared to, especially when it's not a cookie cutter role where it's like, hey, show up and do X, Y, and Z for however many hours a day. So I think like she deserves a lot of recognition for that. But I do kind of agree that, I don't know. It's so hard. Like Ali's such a consummate professional. It's really hard to say that like he's not one of the best color guys. But then again, I'm always thinking of it in the vein of him and Shulman as a team, right? So like whether this award branches out to being commentating duos, which I think is a lot more reasonable. And then there's another category for like sideline reporting or host or something of that nature. I think that that's super necessary. I mean, when we got the initial ballot, I want to say that there was like 30 or 40 people in this category to initially choose from. And it's difficult. Like the vast majority of them deserve some sort of acknowledgement for the hard work that they're putting in. Especially when, it's so hard to leave off like Lon and Norm, but let's be honest, they're only doing this a couple of times a year, as opposed to a Shulman and Ali who are doing this maybe 100 shows a year, or a Jeff and a Brent that are filling in the gap and maybe doing 100 or 200 shows a year. So I think like consistency matters a lot. I think that, if to Sarah's point, if we look at the breadth of their work, like how far have they come? Brent just broke into this 3-4 years ago. Jamie just broke into this 3-4 years ago, and they're pretty much top notch in the industry. So I hope in the future we kind of like frame this award show in a way where we're signaling to the poker community as a whole that these are the people that we've raised through the ranks and have kind of promoted. Something that I think like professional sports do a really good job of.
Yeah, and you said each year, the Global Poker Awards has done a great job of evolving, and certainly credit to Eric Denis and his wonderful team at the GPI. They are aware of the feedback, they listen to it, and they don't just keep it the way it was last year. They do continually try to evolve, and I think they will find feedback of this nature interesting. And we'll see what the 2022 Global Poker or 2023 Global Poker Awards will look like next year. We got one more category to look at. That would be the Fans' Choice Poker Personality. This one, as of this moment, actually, the voting is still open, but by the time the broadcast goes live, it won't be. So we can't have a direct impact on it. We got 4 very interesting nominees. We've got Johan Gilbert of France. Greg Goes All In. Does anyone even know his last name? It's Greg Leo. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Jonathan Little and Masato Yokosawa of Japan. Matt Savage, what would you like to say about this interesting panel of nominees here for Fans' Choice Poker Personality of the Year 2021?
Well, I always am interested in making the game global, and I think the GPI awards need to be more global. I think that a lot of the focus is still on the United States, and as being in Israel, there's more to poker than just the United States. I hate to say it, but it's true. So, of course, Masato Yokosawa has a huge following in Japan. I don't even know how many views he gets on all of his videos, but I know it's a lot, and I know it's growing the game in Asia, which I think is a big focus for us on the World Poker Tour, and growing it globally. I think that makes a big difference. Jonathan Little has his mailing list, and so that's how he gets in this every year, and will probably win because he's going to have all of his army voting for him because of that. I think that that's probably going to happen again. But again, with this list with Yo Viral being in France and in Canada, Greg Goes All In. I just think that it's a good topic to discuss because I think as I keep saying, the game is so much more than just the United States.
Sure. And with this one, again, this is a fan's choice. This is just a pure fan vote. And, to a degree, you can't even say there were any snubs because it's just, the votes came in whatever number they came. Berkey, what are your thoughts there? Is it, an award that should be given, or is it just who's got the most active and engaged following, perhaps?
It is a very good measurement in the ability to engage with the community. That part kind of bothers me. I'm not really sure that there's any way to correct for it, but I kind of echo Matt's sentiments in the sense that this shouldn't be like an email petition. But at the same token, Greg's going to put out content on his YouTube channel as well the other guys, and that should lead to clicks. I just feel like I feel less dirty about that, right? They're kind of soliciting themselves through the channels that made them popular. And for me, Greg's a runaway in this category. He's so remarkably creative, and this category has nothing to do with poker ability, which, not saying he doesn't have any, but I'm saying it's an afterthought with, just the amount of content that he's managed to put out over the course of a year.
It's okay. He says he doesn't have any poker ability, so it's okay to say that.
I mean, he played on Poker Out Loud. I can confirm he's struggling a little bit, but he was so wildly entertaining. I mean, he was just a riot to watch and to listen to. And I don't think people understand that he's actually classically trained as an actor, so he's bringing a very polished set of skills to an arena that's desperate for a bit of an overhaul. We're getting to that point where just seeing hand histories over and over and over again is going to get a little bit trite. And I think he put a very unique spin on the entire space. Yo Viral's a huge character as well. And I think that unfortunately he gets a little outshined in this category. He's huge in his local native France, but probably doesn't have the same global appeal. I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of the category. The more fan interaction, the better. I guess I would just wish it were something. We're just still so small as an industry, right? That one person can still kind of tactically, I don't want to say manipulate the category, but lean it in their favor. Mm-hmm. Where we're talking about the American Music Awards fan voting, there's no artist that's going to be able to go out there and petition their audience to ensure that they win.
Right. Now, valid point there. Sarah, you see these 4 finalist nominees here. Are there names that you thought would appear that didn't? And when you see these names, did you know? Obviously, we know Jonathan Little. We know Yo Viral. Were you surprised to see Greg Goes All In and Masato there?
I mean, so one of the elements of my job is analyzing the analytics from our video content. And like, as I returned from maternity, I was, deep in what had happened during the WSOP. So we had done a whole series with vloggers, with content creators, and it was vastly like not even a question that Yokosawa like has a zillion million followers. His video had like 150K hits within 2 or 3 days. Someone that doesn't speak English particularly well, and I thought when I saw the interview, like, man, this may or may not really like hit because he's just kind of hard to understand. Maybe no, he has a super loyal audience, and actually, then I took some time to dig into his content, and what he's doing content-wise, I think is super cool. He takes this more traditional look at a hand, let's peel the cards in this look, right? But then he adds in all these crazy graphics and like very Japanese, like wakakaka, like I don't know. For me, I was like, what he's doing, I think, is really creative, and his team is obviously really creative. It's just hard to tell. The same with Yo Viral. I think he probably will get more of a US based audience now that he's started, working the subtitles in. But really, like, if you're not going to do primarily English based stuff, it's hard for me to follow your content and hard for lots of people to follow your content. Jonathan Little's a lovely person, but again, I see it as like he's already won lots of awards. If it was my choice, I would much prefer see more people highlighted. And I think Greg goes all in. I have to say, I hope that he takes this one down. What he is doing, I feel like one of the things that keeps people from making amazing content now is that they think it needs to have some sort of quality level, right? Like you need some sort of camera and you need this kind of editing equipment and this sound equipment. And it keeps people from just doing fun, weird ideas. And I think that what Greg's been doing for a while with really no apologies is just creating like the stuff we were making in film school, but like about poker. It's about the content, right? It's about like what he's saying and what he's doing, not about like how polished it looks or how good it looks. And I also think as an industry, it's good for us to kind of like go back to those roots and remember that it's like much more about what somebody's saying than it is about like how nice the lighting is on the background.
Awesome. Some excellent takes there. Thank you all. Really, again, clearly shows you came in very well prepared for this show and definitely in tune, fingers on the pulse of what's going on in this industry. Very interesting to hear your opinions. Folks, we'll be right back after this message with the second half of episode number 15 of The Orbit. Welcome back to episode number 15 of The Orbit. We hope you guys have been enjoying the show so far. I know I have. How about you guys? Enjoying it?
Love it.
Wonderful. at least Matt Savage does. Very cool. Okay, good. So we're going to run into the second half of the show. Our second topic on this show, the Global Poker Awards represents one of the rare instances, we've all been there, we all know it, where the industry, the entire industry, comes together. While competition is good, we also know that there's strength in numbers. I'm wondering if the three of you can perhaps suggest or propose any other sort of initiative that could maybe unify us as an industry to help grow the game's profile and maybe also bring some more investment, some money into poker. Sarah, why don't you start us off?
I mean, I have to say, I definitely agree. I think when we all come together at the awards, for example, like Matt can attest to, I think we all can, like the World Series is kind of one beast of an animal. The World Poker Tour is one, the European Poker Tour. And in a lot of ways, I think for a very small industry, we're still extremely disjointed. And there would be a lot to be gained from us all getting together more often. Of course, everything just costs money. Do I think it would make so not that long ago, okay, it might have been a little while ago, but I came to Israel for a conference that 888 Poker put on, and it was mostly just internal, right? It was mostly their team, but they invited me, which I really appreciated. And while there, they had sort of different elements of their team showing what they were planning, why they're doing this, what their strategy for this was. And I found it super informative, and it helped me do my job better and to think more effectively about how I could not only help them, but help the game as a whole. And so, like, could we are, a Las Vegas based industry, sort of, or we could say that, like, is it also maybe the conference capital of at least America? Maybe we could hold some sort of like small conference where all the major powerhouses could come and do something, like showcase some of their best, most talented people or fun, cool things they're working on. And we could invite people and they could all come together. Maybe the key is everyone needs to have some drinks together, I think, is where that's where the symbiosis really happens.
Gotta let the spirits flow. And folks at 888, if you're listening, and do that again, I freaking live in Israel. I'm a bus ride away. Invite me next time. Just saying. Matt Savage, you heard what Sarah had to say. I mean, I find myself nodding in agreement with something like that. You have worked with a number of different rooms nationwide in the States as well as abroad. Is it possible for the industry to come together beyond the Global Poker Awards and other sorts of initiatives? And if so, how would you see that happening?
Well, I love it. I love the idea, and I think that the conference idea is a good one. We do have one every other year. Didn't have it because of the COVID downturn, but we did do a Tournament Directors Association Summit where we get people, tournament directors, players, card room managers coming from all over the world into Las Vegas, and hope to do it again this year at ARIA. If we can pull that off again, we're going to have that go on during the summer. And I just think it's a great way to get everybody together, not only just, to talk about what we could do to move this industry forward, but also to get everybody together. And I know that there's been a lot of, Twitter is not a great place for poker players to talk to each other and industry people to talk to each other. So it's always nice to see people face to face. And I hope we can do more of that. I love the conference idea. I think we need to do something like that. I think that Sarah's onto something with that, and hopefully we can do more to make the influence global. I still want to push on that. Latin America is such a huge market for poker, and just really haven't seen all the benefits that we can see from that going forward. So I just would love to see us making this more a global game. I keep saying it over and over again.
I do think that, many in the industry do kind of hold that opinion that it would be a net good thing if it happens. Sarah did mention, it does take money to make it happen. So if there's a party out there, an organization, folks, there is a desire, you can build it, we will come, but the money does obviously have to be there as well. Berkey, I'm wondering from your perspective as well, from the industry, we talk about this sort of stuff. It's fun to talk, to dress up in suits as well. Players, though, is that something that they would also take an active interest in? Twitter's fine. You sit home alone and, it's just very, very, very easy. But, if there's a conference of this nature, if there's some sort of an additional something besides the Global Poker Awards where we aim to bring the industry together, will the players also show up, in your opinion?
Yeah, I talked about this with Ingram on his podcast maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's something that I've been pretty, I don't want to say passionate about, but I'm very confident that we've missed the mark on this for the better part of a decade. We already have the beginnings of this. We host the WSOP in Las Vegas every single year. There's 20 to 30,000 people in foot traffic that come through those halls, and we do absolutely nothing as an industry to capitalize on it outside of, funnel them into a tournament room and rake them to death. It's kind of inexcusable, to be honest. There's no format or platform where operators, influencers, media, players, fans, and everything in between can kind of get on stable footing and advance this industry. And the reason why this is so necessary, and I see this in the education space as well, we're reaching kind of a crux where the industry is very threatened. If there isn't more collaboration and a more unified approach to cooperating amongst all of these different areas, what's ultimately going to win out is just greed, and the game is going to die. Because the natural incentive in a zero-sum game is to exploit until there's no exploit left, and then just exit. And we're heading down that path. There's a ton of security issues that we're dealing with online right now. There is, obviously all of the COVID fallout that we're dealing with live. There was a huge opportunity with, and there still will be moving forward, with an influx of revenue due to crypto and the overlap between those two spaces. There's just so much opportunity to move laterally and be much more inclusive and grow this space in a way that is logical if we can get on some sort of level playing field where, players feel like they're heard by operators feel like their best interests are kept in mind by media. Media is now coordinating with influencers. All of these things need to be a free-flowing part of the community, and right now they're completely disjointed. Everybody is their own unique startup. Educators are on their own island, and they're just competing against one another until somebody wins. Influencers are doing the exact same, with the exception of exactly the vloggers. And look at what they've managed to accomplish. Nimi and Owen have bought a card house. You know what I mean? And there are 20 following in their footsteps who all have immediate access to them if necessary. I think that's the best example of a part of this space that actually has coordinated and worked. To me, I mean, yeah, it's a battle of resources. People have encouraged me, oh, you should just try it. If 100 people show up, who cares? That'd be great. And I disagree. I think that this is something that it needs to be coordinated and it needs to go off without a hitch. Kind of like the awards. If the first award show was just this tiny little thing that nobody paid any attention to, it probably wouldn't exist right now. But instead, the first iteration had backing, it had a sponsorship. People cared enough that they had a little bit of pride in hosting an award or hoisting an award rather. And it kept it moving forward. I'm not saying we need to get to the level of South by Southwest, but something in that vein where, you do give the platform to some panels, you give the platform to some speakers, you give the platform to educators, you give the platform to players. I think that is very appealing to the masses, especially, for the common, I guess, collective that we're all trying to address, which is, the average Joe who's watching the WPT or the WSOP on TV. That's our target audience. It's everybody's target audience. And they want to hear from Negreanu in person, and they want to hear from poker stars as to, why their money is safe with them. They want to just be more educated, I think.
And I think this was, so in the initial stages of this was then the American Poker Awards, right? The first 2 years, where we had conferences beforehand and panels, which were moderated. And this was, I think, still a kind of small version, which was streamed. And I do think, obviously, the WSOP in Vegas makes so much sense. And actually, I do think a lot of the places who have a lot of money also do a lot of them see the bigger picture. For example, PokerStars did sponsor the Global Poker Awards because I think they realized there's something here. This is something important. And even I was super surprised when I was dealing with GG Poker, for example, in looking at the World Series and trying to negotiate their sponsorship of some of our coverage. I was like, well, is it okay if we talk to then PokerStars people too? What if we do 888 people? Da-da. And GG's answer was, we want you to do all of the coverage that you want to do because we feel like whatever is good for the game be it Poker Stars or 888 or whatever, however we grow poker is ultimately good for poker. And it's like the more people I think start to think that way, or even hear other people think that way, we can get this thing going. But when you hear people speaking like that, who have the kind of money I think that they have, it's like, okay, cool. If you're listening to The Orbit, let's get some funding going. And Matt Berkey's ready to produce it from Vegas. Like, let's go. I'll moderate a panel on women in poker, as you know. I'm ready for that.
I love it. So some very insightful remarks, and you certainly didn't just allude to it. You said it outright. That is something, at least to a limited degree, we're trying to do here, at least virtually on the Orbit. If you also, again, I'm an available panel host if you need whoever wants to put their resources behind it. But I do think, again, we could all agree that such a thing would be a net good for the industry. It's time to turn to our penultimate topic of the show. Folks, some within the poker industry and community don't think that the awards matter, or perhaps maybe they're just sort of indifferent to the ceremony itself. From your perspective, why do you think that having the awards each year is a good thing? The awards specifically, we've talked specifically, about bringing the industry together, but about having a show specifically, why do you think that that's a good thing? Savage, actions on you.
Well, everybody's talking about it, right? So if you listen to all the podcasts like I do, we're all talking about it. Who got nominated? Who got snubbed? Who deserves to win this? Who deserves to win that? And to me, it's, if we're all talking about it, it means something to somebody. So the fact that it does mean something to somebody and to a lot of people, it's important for the industry. I've often called this night, the best night of poker, for the year when we have those awards. Everybody gets together. It's a good time to come see each other and be a part of something that's bigger than the game itself. And I think that this is. You do see a lot of people out there that think it's, a joke. It's terrible. It means nothing. It means something to the people that are in the industry. I can tell you that just from being that side of it. A lot of people care about it. Eric Danis and his team put a lot of work into this. They've done more than I think any other award show in the world to make sure that the voting process has changed over time to make it more fair, and the people that get nominated deserve to be nominated. So I think it's important. I think it's definitely important for the game, and the fact that we have something to talk about on all these podcasts that are going on all the time is important too. So I'd love to see it continue. I think that they're doing a great job with it. A lot of people bashed on Alex Dreyfus long ago when he had this idea and came up with it, but it's still here, still surviving. And so, like I said, it means something to somebody.
That is an assessment with which I would concur, even from the moderator role. I think the industry side of things, the media side of things, certainly sees a value in having just, frankly, more content to talk about. Just more topics of conversation. Matt Berkey, I got to turn to you again from the player's perspective. Lots of times, the types of criticism or any sort of criticism or indifference that we see is more from the player's side than from the industry's side. Do you think that it's a net, sort of good thing to have these awards? And perhaps how could we convince more players that is the case, if so?
I mean, it's for sure not good, right? It's just a positive free roll. There's really no downside to it whatsoever. I think that the issue that poker specifically runs into, and maybe this is true for like even the ESPYs with athletes, is that we're trained to be apathetic to results. And the idea is that you never get too high or too low. And, if you ask any true professional what matters more, the trophy or the money, they're going to say the money, and rightfully so. Nobody's, you can't spend a trophy, and it truly isn't worth very much other than a story for the glory days. That's not to say it's not worth anything, though. It's certainly an industry that needs to be celebrating the small wins a lot more frequently. I think we're just fundamentally terrible at this. We're really good at shining a spotlight on who's failing and kind of blowing that out of proportion. We're really good at taking a short-term narrative of who's a crusher based off of results in an industry that ironically is not supposed to be results oriented, and giving them a brief platform. But we're very terrible at just acknowledging one another day to day, year to year, decade to decade, based on who is doing a reasonably good job in the industry in a myriad of different ways, right? And that's probably the other biggest challenge that the award show faces, is that you can't really base it on even a year's worth of results, right? In most instances, when you're talking about like who was the best tournament player this year, the GPI does an okay job of that in having a ranking system, but that's not voted on, right? All of the subjective awards, though, best tournament performance, best run event, like all of these things, it's kind of very surface level, and I think that that's where you lose the players. For like myself, I'm a cash game player. What award would I ever be up for, right? There's just literally nothing to acknowledge that. And personally, like, that's fine. I don't think I care. But from a fan standpoint, it's like they're probably watching 10x more hours of live streamed cash games than they are of tournaments. So though tournament players get the vast majority of the media, it's going to there's going to be a hard shift in the industry at some point where the majority of the players that are household names are only going to be the high roller tournament players, and then all of the regulars on these cash streams. We're just seeing too many of them pop up. I think that was probably an oversight this year as well, to not have some sort of award for all of these shows. Any given day, there are 3 or 4 streams to choose from. So that means that you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 40 streams a week. That's something worth acknowledging, especially when it wasn't that long ago that we only had WPT, WSOP, and PokerGo to choose from.
Yeah, definitely some good thoughts there, perhaps also foreshadowing what our last topic of conversation will be. Sarah, you have position here. You've heard not one but 2 Matts give their opinion on this subject. What do you think about the Global Poker Awards? Why is it a good thing to have? How can we convince more people that that is the case, and perhaps not to be indifferent or to hate on it?
I mean, of course, my sentiments are extremely anecdotal from mostly my own experience, but I would say that, we're in an industry that quite often you feel, I've had plenty of times looking at my life and thinking about directions I was maybe going to take or didn't take or could have taken. And you find yourself in an industry where even when you try to explain to other people and your friends and family, like, I work in poker, like I make this kind of content, or it's very for most people. And so I do think you can have these like existential moments in your life of like, have I done anything of value? Like, does this even mean anything? And to have peers that you recognize are very intelligent and very capable and competent recognize you in whatever specific niche you are in this industry, I think is extremely affirming. And whether or not that is necessary, I don't know, but do I think that it matters? 1,000,000%. And actually, in terms of categories and adjusting things, I was so happy to see the live reporters, have a category this year. And I think that's something that has been missing. And these people who love poker, who love this game, who've dedicated their lives to writing about this game, I think a nod to a lot of them is due. And yeah, I don't know, like, is it necessary? I don't know, but like, does it matter? It definitely matters. And I think everyone who's won one or been nominated, I think it matters more probably than people realize.
Yeah.
And doesn't it also mean something, Robbie, that if you get nominated for these things, you're going to make more money for yourself? If there was a poker coach of the year and Berkey won that, would he not make more money for his site? Would the Poker Cast, if the Poker News Poker Cast won, would they not pick up more sponsors? That type of thing. If an industry person like myself wins, do I not get more opportunities in the industry? So I think it's important to those people as well. And you should always try to achieve to be the best in the world at what you do. And once you reach that top level, I think you should be rewarded by that in some way. And I think that the GPI does that.
Yeah. I definitely agree. It's a great marketing tool, and I heard recently on the Bernard Lee Poker Show, actually, Josh Aryeh, he and the two of them were talking, and they said, there's two kinds of folks. I think Phil Gordon was quoted, those who have one and those who don't, and they're referring to the bracelet. And I think, when you have, been nominated, and you can certainly have that type of a perspective or have won the award, but yeah, it definitely does matter. And I will just point to one thing that Berkey mentioned. What type of award would you win? There is also a relatively new category, I think, because they heard that sort of feedback. I think it was Player's Choice Toughest Opponent. So that is something that the GPI has done to sort of pivot a little bit more in that direction of recognizing folks. Guys, this is the beer level, the last level of the orbit, our final topic for today before we round out the show. Again, we kind of alluded to it a little bit, maybe what's missing, how could we adapt? We want to just ask the three of you your thoughts. What are some future award categories of excellence or achievement that you would like to see recognized at next year's Global Poker Awards, and why? Berkey, I think you kind of made your opinion obvious there. Are you going to stick with that one, with the streaming?
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. I think we absolutely have to. Honestly, I would be on the side of being redundant with awards for people who are putting in the most effort. Like, if we had 4 different types of awards for commentators, fine. If we had a bunch of awards that segregated streams and podcasts, I mean, there are hundreds of poker podcasts, right? And another good example is like best media video. It's like, that is so generic. There was a 30-second run it once ad up against 2 full feature-length documentaries and a 2-minute long YouTube skit. It's like, we have
and a
to
TikTok. There was 2 TikToks on the long list. I was like, the fool.
Right, and it's like, you're asking people to vote on these, and you're if they're not familiar with it, you're giving them a link. It's like, well, what are they going to watch? The 15 to 30-second piece or the 90-minute feature-length doc, right? So it's like, we have to be able to segment in a way that offers more awards, not fewer. I don't think you're going to cheapen the idea of an award that the vast majority of the players are already pretty apathetic about. So I think it's all about recognizing the people who are kind of in the trenches out there producing content every day. Like the live streams are a perfect example of that. The Hustler Live, I think, started like last August, and they are already breaching on their 100th show. It's like that's a pretty big deal. We just don't, we take it so much for granted that there's a need, so therefore it's going to get fulfilled, but they really don't have to, and they're taking on a lot of risk. Like, we're not that far removed from Stones. We're not that far removed from the idea of this not being that safe and that secure, and everybody who's operating in this area seems to be doing it with that in mind and on the up and up. So I would just, as a whole, I would like to see us cover a much broader spectrum in a way where there were more appropriate winners rather than kind of just trying to fit everything into one generic category and plucking out a winner.
Hashtag more awards are better. Sarah, what are your thoughts there? Which awards have we not yet seen, or maybe they're missing from this year and we used to give them, in previous years? What sort of awards would you like to see at next year's show that we don't have this year?
I mean, I definitely agree with Berkey. I think there's a lot of, especially, something I've discovered in trying to manage a bunch of different social platforms, just as one example, is that they are totally different. They ask for completely different things. Like the idea that you can take content, for example, even like you said, video content, and put it into one category is, but it's something that's changing all the time. And I think it's something that's hard to kind of keep up with. So do I expect that hopefully things will, shift as we see the content start to shift? If I had to give like a more specific answer, something I think would be fun that we could all talk about, that I think would be like dicey or interesting, would be pulling some of these quote unquote characters from some of the streams who, by the way, are taking big risks and doing things, I think, to be characters, to be fun, to be interesting. I would like to see a category that acknowledges people who come and play live streams and are fun and interesting to watch. It's its own skill. It's its own thing. And then, yeah, I would like to see our content and the people who are the faces of that content. Of course, this is like more specific to things I do, so I see it more, I care about it more, but to break down this content in more effective ways, broadcasters, journalists, people who are doing great things on social medias, to just break down the content a little bit more so we could shine some more lights on some of that.
Cool. I like it. Good, solid opinion, grounded in experience. And speaking of experience, Matt, you do have Matt Savage, the most experience of all of us here. You've been around the poker industry the longest, seen the most players pass through your view. What are your thoughts here? What additional awards ought to be there, whether on the industry side, media side, or on the players side that we don't see this year?
So I guess that means I'm the oldest, huh? That's what you're trying to say?
You are the most experienced.
I would say, the best poker training site. I think that's important, part of our industry. I don't think it gets recognized enough. And obviously, if there's people that we're going to do this, we're going to be promoting these training sites a little bit more. And I think those guys need to be recognized. I think it's a big part of our industry. I think an influencer type category, I know that we have personality. It's kind of the same thing, but there are some people that are big influencers in our game. And I think that, while it might cross over to be the same thing, there's definitely people that are out there trying to do, good work to bring people more into our game. And I think that's important as well. And I don't know, we don't have enough comedy. We don't have enough fun in our industry. So I know that there's been categories in the past about, who has the best events as far as, having fun. But I think there needs to be more fun, more about the recreational player and what they enjoy to play. I just still think they're the key to our industry. So recreational players could be more involved in some way. I would love to see that as well. And last but not least, of course, best poker hair. So I put my early nomination in for Sarah Herring.
I love it. A great note on which to end the show. Sarah, also, very on point. Thank you for color coordinating with us today. That is all the time we have. We hope you guys have all enjoyed this episode number 15 of The Orbit. Thank you again so much to our panelists, Matt Berkey, Sarah Herring, and Matt Savage for joining us. We'd love to get your feedback, so please be sure to use #TheOrbit when sharing or leaving us, or please leave us a comment on Facebook, Twitter, and all your other social media outlets. Finally, this episode will remain available on demand on twitch.tv/poker. I'm Robbie Strazynski. I'll see you again next time on The Orbit.
Show me a smile so I